Maps define us. Imaginary lines that delineate neighborhoods. They speak to where we've been and who we are. But these old boundaries only show part of the picture. Here are the new maps of Brooklyn. These are the maps that tell the story of Brooklyn today. And this is what it's like to live on the grid.
Hi, I'm Zephyr Teachout. We're back on the grid in Brooklyn. And today we're going to look at the largest Chinatown. It's one of the fastest growing immigrant communities. It's bigger than Manhattan's Chinatown. Let's start with going to talk to John Mollenkopf, Director of the Center for Urban Research at CUNY.
Good morning, Zephyr. Another beautiful morning in Brooklyn.
Wonderful to see you. What do you got for me?
Well, the new Brooklyn Chinatown, or not so new these days.
How is it changing? Like, how big is this compared to how big it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Well, I started coming to the neighborhood in the early 1980s, and at that point there were stores like Carlson's Bar across the street and old Norwegian stores. And by now, all of the Norwegian and Scandinavian past is pretty much completely gone, except for a few funeral homes, and it's entirely Chinese. And that's happened in the space of about 30 years.
Wow. So what would this look like 50 years ago? What was the community?
Well, this part of the neighborhood was more Italian, as opposed to closer to the bay. The development of the community was really spurred by the building of the subway system after the turn of the last century. And then that's when all of this area got built up in the teens, 20s, into the 30s. Of course, things slowed down in the Depression. Then in the 1950s, the port basically moved over to New Jersey and things containerized, and the whole technology and economics of shipping changed. And there was really no more Brooklyn waterfront like there used to be. And those populations were aging and suburbanizing and doing the rest of the things that the European immigrants did. And the Chinese, more or less by accident, I think, discovered this as a really good place that had nice housing, inexpensive housing, was well connected to Chinatown, and just gradually began to move here. There were a few key businesses to begin with, and then the community reinforced itself. And then, especially after 9/11, Chinatown, was pretty much closed off to traffic and commerce. And that, even at that point, a lot more of the garment manufacturing shifted over here to Sunset Park. So we have industry, we have retail, we have wholesaling, all kinds of professional services have cropped up and so forth.
So what's the language portrait?
About 85% of the people speak Chinese at home. I mean, everybody in China learns Mandarin, but most of the people would speak either Cantonese or Fujianese here, which is a different dialect. And somebody from the north of China can't necessarily understand it, and vice versa, even though it's spelled exactly the same way, same characters.
So another thing I've heard about is that people in this Chinatown tend to come from a different city or region than the Manhattan Chinatown.
Well, the latest wave of Chinese immigration to New York over the past 10 or 20 years has been from Fuzhou, from the coast in South China. And I think those people have tended to settle here more frequently. The folks out in Flushing tend to be more Taiwanese, maybe more upper middle class. This is a somewhat more working class character to it, but very, very industrious. Half the people here own their homes, which is quite unusual. In New York, only about a third of the people own their homes, generally speaking, in New York.
And what about income and work profile?
It's interesting because it's kind of a more bifurcated or varied community than some. But I think the most remarkable thing about the community is that many people came in with very low levels of education, working in relatively low-skilled occupations like being a cook or a waiter or a seamstress in a garment factory. And their kids have done fantastically well. One of the fellows working here is a Bheard college graduate, for example. And the fact that there's so many college graduates in the community, I think, reflects the very rapid upward mobility of the next generation. So the next generation is not going to be working in restaurants, and it's not going to be, the women are not going to be in garment shops. They're going to be working in banks, law firms, universities, and so on. And that's going to transform the nature of the community here and lift its incomes. So you're going to see all kinds of interesting things, both commercial strips and the large dim sum restaurants that have opened up here. That's made the area a magnet for people all over New York City. And it's a sight to behold on a Saturday or Sunday morning to be in one of these big dim sum parlors. It's really a kind of magical balletic experience that's going on. You know, I've never had a bubble tea, and I'm really enjoying it because as a kid, my grandmother made tapioca pudding for me, which I always loved and never saw it again since my childhood, but it's great to have it in this drink.
Well, thanks a lot. This is fantastic. I look forward to seeing all of what you have described.
Well, you know, in a way, this is seeing the future of New York City. We think of the future of New York City as big, shiny buildings in Manhattan, but it's also growing communities that are successful and striving, and their children are upwardly mobile, and they will definitely make their mark on the future of the city.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy your day. I'll go check out the future. Have a great
thanks for the
ride.
bubble tea.
Absolutely.
Take care.